Kia ora koutou, welcome back everybody, and welcome to those of you who are joining us in person for the first time today here in the Terrace Lounge. And I don't think there's anybody who's online just yet. So this is the fourth and final of these sections here in the Terrace Lounge, or the eighth in total of these sessions if you count the Zoom room, which I absolutely do. And all of the feedback so far is that it's been a fantastic day, so thank you to those of you who have presented. No pressure to those of you who have yet to present. So we've got our last session today. We're going to hear from Eden and Andrew, who are going to be talking about the work at Mahu Whenua and native forest regeneration. Then we're going to have Rhys, who's going to talk to us about earthquakes in Dunedin and a film that he's been working on. And then we're going to have Megan, who's been doing work with the Prime Minister's Chief Science Advisor on food waste and looking at organic bans to landfill. So we're going to be moving around in different spaces within this broad sphere of sustainability one more time. And as with all of our previous sessions, each of our presenters will have 15 minutes and encourage you to hold your questions to the end, where they'll all come back up, sit up here, and we'll have a 15-minute or so Q&A, and then we'll close this whole seminar. So without further ado, I'll invite Eden and Andrew up.
Hey everyone, my name's Eden and this is Andrew, and today we're going to be talking about planting trees in paradise.
So the University of Otago has committed themselves to reaching net zero carbon emissions by 2030. One of the focuses of this initiative is on staff and business air travel, which as of 2022 accounts for 13% of the university's current emissions. Air travel is important for staff and faculty to attend domestic and international conferences, as well as for bringing in esteemed speakers to the university. Alongside efforts to reduce carbon emissions, the university is looking to offset the remainder of the emissions, which goes hand in hand with our project with the 1 billion trees to which kind of overlaps with the university's goal of offsetting carbon and making more sustainable regeneration possible.
So our work was done in Mahu Whenua, which is located near Wanaka, as you guys can see in this photo here. It is the largest privately owned conservation area and is 53,000 hectares. It has remnants of beech forest, especially in the gullies, but most of the land has been converted for pastoral use, as it is still a working farm. There is conservation work going on in Mahu Whenua to regenerate some of the deforested land into native bush. This photo shows a close-up of the 4 different covenants that make up Mahu Whenua, which is the Motatapu Station, Mount Soho, Glencoe, and Coronet Peak. Our work was done at Motatapu.
Right, now that we've introduced our little slice of paradise, we get to talk about all the fun things that past year students have been doing here. One of which is the students that mapped out areas that are potentially eligible for the ETS or emissions trading scheme, and also had waypoints set up to look at these potentially eligible areas. At the waypoints, the students had to identify and count all the native species there, as well as some of the waypoints requiring them to cut down a small little tree disc for the sizing and aging of the tree, which is useful for working out the growth rates of the tree. Here you can see the map of Mahu Whenua with the different potential and existing carbon credit areas, with the light green representing the potential areas and the orange representing the already existing credit areas. And then continuing on, the work that the students from previous years did was my project, where I was looking at analyzing or just looking at the size and age of the tree rings to basically graph the relationship, which, look at the bottom of the slide, you can see the 3 graphs that we managed to get out of the data, as well as if you look in the top right, you can see me slaving away behind a microscope, counting the little tree rings of the trees. Yeah.
As mentioned before, our project was tied in with MPI's 1 billion trees project, which is basically their initiative to plant 1 billion trees by 2030. As of the end of last year, they have managed to plant over 600 million trees. Why is this important? Because it allows us to transform New Zealand's land from pastoral land into forest, again, as it once was. It allows for carbon sequestration, which ties in with the university's net zero carbon goal, as well as tackling many environmental issues such as erosion. MPI encourages both permanent and plantation forests made up of exotic, so introduced species, as well as native species. Unfortunately, most of the trees that have been planted are Pinus radiata, which are pine trees, which pose their own issues, but they are cheap and easy to grow, which means they are easy to be eligible for the ETS scheme. This is why our focus is on planting native trees and growing these trees from seeds while finding the optimal conditions to grow in. This helps us towards our national goal of making New Zealand greener and increasing our biodiversity, as well as, basically educating people around why growing native trees is more important.
It also helps contribute to the university's goal of reaching net zero by 2030.
Our specific project aims included setting up on-campus and field trials, which was to assess mycorrhizal inoculation for beech seedlings, as well as on-campus trials were using manuka seedlings. It was to understand optimal conditions for regenerating the deforested land in Mahu Whenua, as well as Andrew's work on aging tree discs from last year's summer students. Since our focus is on mycorrhizae, some of you might ask, what is mycorrhizae? Mycorrhizae is a mutualistic association that forms between vascular plant roots as well as fungi. It is important for delivering nutrients and water and benefits the root growth of plants and occurs in over 80% of the vascular plants. Why is this important for us? It's because beech trees are ectomycorrhizal, which are the only plants in New Zealand that are strictly ectomycorrhizal, which means that the fungi, as you can see in the photo here, does not penetrate into the root, whereas an endomycorrhizal plant, the fungal does penetrate. Manuka are also important for our project as they are both ecto and endomycorrhizal. Now that you guys know that, this is a plan of our field work. So basically this photo shows a schematic of our field trial, which was a 60 metre by 60 metre scraped out plot in Mahu Whenua. And the university has an experimental area within the Motatapu station that they're allowed to do work on. This area was then divided into 5 separate 9 by 9 metre blocks. This is an example of one of the blocks. Within the block, it was divided into 9 3 metre by 3 metre squares, which then had a 1.5 by 1.5 metre experimental area with different treatments for different plots. So this is an example here. So beech trees were the trees planted as seedlings that we were trying to establish. Bracken was used as an important nursery plant, and it was dug out and planted with the rhizomes so that we could hope for new bracken growth in the future. But duff pods were used as they are compacted soil from a naturally occurring beech or manuka or respective tree ground, and with hopes that they contain the mycorrhizae. And same with the manuka duff pods. And then manuka seeds were used as manuka to hopefully grow manuka seedlings, which are important as they contain both endo and ectomycorrhizae. And plant shelters were also used, and plants around 12 plants in each block to understand the importance of shade, as beech trees are susceptible to sunburn and usually require an already established beech canopy to grow successfully. So here we have all of the different treatments. And then this one shows that there is no bracken planted with these treatments. And then some in here, there's no duff pods planted, and then no beech trees planted, so that we get an idea of what the optimal conditions are for beech trees to establish.
Right, now that you've heard the plan in theory, we'll talk about the plan in action. So if you look at the slide, you can see both Eden and myself measuring out holes for Huntley to dig, who you can see in the background there. We are very thankful for Huntley because he saved us hours of digging holes and yeah, saved us a lot of time. Here you can see both Eden and I planting the trees as well as the bracken and setting up the plant guards and the wool mats. And then finally, you can see both Eden and I looking very happy with a job well done. Now, if we go into the progress so far of the trial, you can see it doesn't look too great. We found a couple trees missing and the bracken is looking a little bit worse for wear. But not to despair, because on a recent trip to Mahu Whenua, we found bracken sprouting from the rhizomes of the dead looking bracken, which is exactly what we wanted and looks very good or very promising for the project. And also you can see what may look like just a pile of dirt, but is actually little manuka seedlings sprouting, which is also what we wanted and overall bodes well for the experiment. Contrasting this is the on-campus controlled trial, which looks a lot more green. If you look at the bottom left, you can see all the manuka sprouting and that looks amazing. And if you look at the bottom right, that's where the beech was planted. And although it's not showing there, that is just because beech takes a very long time to germinate, which basically means the result is going, or the experiment is going as expected. And so, to recap, over the summer, we've managed to set up a controlled and field trial to understand the optimal growth conditions for regeneration of deforested land. This will take a while because trees don't tend to grow overnight. We've also continued on the university's ETS registration. And so the outcomes of our summer scholarship project is to hand MPI some information about how to effectively regenerate trees or regenerate land using native trees, and also to enable the completion of the university's ETS registration.
And if everything that we spoke about went over your guys' head, the one thing that we want you guys to take away is the tree on the left is a no-go. That is pine trees. We don't want that. So we encourage you guys to go out there and plant some beech trees.
Thank you guys for listening.
Okay, Rhys, you want to come up and we'll make sure everything's here. Oops, let's go.
Kia ora koutou. Yeah, this is my film. I'm making a film about the 1974 earthquake called "Are You Ready to Shake Dunedin?" So I'll just do a wee mihi. Ko ka puka taumahaka te mauka, ko te awa o tākou te awa, ko kati Pākehā te iwi, no o te poti ahau, ko Rhys, Latton, tako wingwa. That's Cape Saunders on the peninsula. I'm from the peninsula, Otago Peninsula, and that's relevant, I assure you. I come from being creative and theatrical. I've had a few decades of being a theatre maker. I have a theatre company with my wife called Aki Aki Theatre Company. We used to make a lot of circus theatre. Body doesn't like that for too long. Dance theatre and other theatre. We'd make our own shows, write them, and get other people on board and do collaborations and things. I've also always taught yoga. Always for decades I've taught yoga, which is a good way of kind of keeping conditioning with these other disciplines. It's also, I found it to be a good pairing with science communication when I decided to go back to university last year and started doing the MAPSci in science communication. They're both storytelling is what you're doing. So with theatre, it goes wherever it goes, and there's no restrictions on whether it's fiction or non-fiction. And science communication has got a few more delineations, but it's still about conveying something, still about communicating something. So my project for the summer has been, well, what happened? I'll just lay this out for you. I saw that Caroline Hyam was Caroline Orcheston, sorry, Caroline. I know Caroline from Peninsula, so it was Hyam, but now it's Orcheston. I saw that there was a summer scholarship for this 50th commemoration to bring some awareness to the fact that there was an earthquake in Dunedin in 1974, 50 years ago, and it seemed to me to be an ideal case for a film, a story. So so I sort of think of this my relationship with the department, with the Centre for Sustainability, as sort of a client contractor sort of situation. I think that's what it'll be like when I'm out in the sort of private sector. So as you can see, it's a number of stakeholders are involved. There's a sort of a collaboration of organisations who are coming together and saying there was an earthquake. Dunedin does have earthquakes. Let's bring some awareness to it, and so that's where my film comes in. So I'll just talk about. I'm going to get to my process in a moment, but I'm just sort of laying down. First of all, my objectives. My objectives intersect with the objectives of the client, but they have to be sort of very specific to the fact that I'm making this resource, which is a film. So it's to create a film for this 50th year commemoration event, and also have it available for whatever other needs, whatever other ways it can be useful. Secondly, to entertain, engage, and inform the target audience. Those three verbs are all very important. I think in academia, quite often, inform is the main verb, but there's studies that show, of course, that if you engage and entertain your audience, there's going to be much more retention of your key messages. So, so I think, and also for me personally, I'm getting on in years. I want to do things that I enjoy. So if you can actually enjoy what you're doing, I've been trying to bring things to this project that actually engage me, and I think that they'll start to entertain others as well. And so then to promote the key messaging about earthquakes in Dunedin. I wonder when I'm going to show the little clip that I've got. I haven't actually decided. I'll figure out a good moment. Audience. I think particularly audiences who have had some experience of earthquakes will be able to connect to the subject matter of this film, and that's sort of shown with the people who I've interviewed. I've interviewed a number of eyewitnesses of the 1974 earthquake, and the ones who have really carried things on. In terms of their awareness of earthquakes, it shows that they've brought that experience into their behaviours and their choices as they've continued on. Messages are that earthquakes can and do happen in Dunedin, and I didn't really know that was actually something that people don't really think about, because I'm a native here, and I just don't think about it much myself. I haven't, but I was talking to one of my interviewees was based in Wellington, and he was saying, "Oh, every building we go into now, we think about what sort of rating does this building have? Have I got my go bag ready to have under the desk? Just in case. It's top of mind." And the second message there, be prepared. So that's having things ready as an individual, but also as a community and as in terms of citywide structures and processes. Okay, getting on to the creative process. Maybe I'll just, before I do this, just show my little, I've just done a little teaser. It's not the film, it's just, my film's not finished, I should just say that. So, what do I do to do this? I'll pull that down. Great.
April 1974. I remember it so vividly.
We were just hanging about watching our black and white TVs, mucking around, you know. It was a school night.
I vividly remember Coronation Street being on.
Great. Okay, so to the creative process, I've put there throwing mud at the wall. This is something that Neil Gaiman said, and I just picked it up recently, about his process of writing his fantasy novels. He's a fantasy novel writer, for those of you who don't know. And from his first draft to his last draft, he sort of starts off by, he says, throwing mud at the wall. And I thought that sounds pretty similar to what I do. Just kind of getting it all out there, just gorging this, what you've got. And he does it all with a pen, with a fountain pen that you buy at a shop, and just does it all on paper first of all. And then he has to go through a process of getting it electronic. And that's already a bit of a change. And then he has to start the process, and he says he's walking up to the wall and seeing what's stuck there and seeing what's turned into kind of a face and what's turned into something other else, and kind of making relationships between all those things. So I thought that's quite good. Some of you may have heard and may use in your own processes this idea of sort of having an open pot kind of process to start off with, where you just accept things, and then you get to a place where you start to pare it all back and try to make something that's intelligible. In the field, you have to get out there and film and just get a whole lot of footage. You get heaps of footage. I've got over an hour of stuff set up on my timeline already, although I am getting towards the end of things and I'm going to cut it all down. And it has to cut down to less than 10 minutes. This is Professor Mark Sterling. He was a great talker. He said, I don't have much time, and then he talked for about an hour. He had heaps to say. And so what you have to do then is go through the transcripts, get transcripts made of all of your interviews. And that includes interviews with general people who are eyewitnesses. And then start to find a way that sort of big rat's nest of crossed over narratives can start to become one storyline, including my own narrative, my own sort of perspectives. They have to be all intersecting. Somewhere in there, we have to hit a jeopardy. This is the Christchurch earthquake, of course, the aftermath of the Christchurch earthquake. So this will be part of the film as well, to just say to Dunedinites who, some of the Dunedinites used to live in Christchurch, some that I've talked to have remember the shake from particularly the Darfield quake and feeling it down here in Dunedin. Everyone in New Zealand, I think, was affected by that quake. So it's a really potent thing to put in there and say this is serious, because early on in the film things are quite gentle, like the clip that I just showed. People's memories are kind of nostalgic about this 1974 happening. Whereas, you know, it's not so gentle anymore when it starts to become a damaging quake like Christchurch. Cultural media of the day. So I've been bringing things in. You might have seen a bit of, you know, like the Coronation Street thing and stuff. I think that's, for me, that's important to bring context to the age, and I think it brings in people who are of an age, who knew about the quake, who experienced the quake, or I talked to a woman who was in her mum's tum. Her mother was heavily pregnant with her, and she just always has these stories about, oh, my heavily pregnant mum with me in her tum had to go under the table and wait out the earthquake, and she was in there, you know, 8 months pregnant or something or other, with her daughter inside. Yeah, so that just continues here. I've found different things online that I've been pinching, appropriating in the appropriate way, such as trolley buses of Dunedin, 1976. No one knows the difference. It's in the Bag, 1974, with Selwyn Toogood. And this is Miss New Zealand, 1973, very much of its era. So those are some things that I've just been bringing in to sort of fill up the kind of the whole cultural context of the time, of the era. That's all I really wanted to say at the moment. The film's not finished just yet, so I don't have a sort of a chronological way of wrapping this up. I just want to say that I'm really grateful for the opportunity to do it, Caroline, and Centre for Sustainability. And feel free to ask me questions when it's question time. Thank
you. Well, thanks, Rhys. And up last, we've got Megan McKenzie.
Kia ora everyone, my name's Megan, and my project has been looking at an international overview of an organics ban to landfill. So up here is just a photo of me and Jackson. Both of our projects were kindly sponsored by the Office of the Prime Minister's Chief Science Advisor. So we also got to go on a really wonderful trip up there and meet the entire team, and that was a really amazing experience. So these are just some of the key concepts that have come along. They've been in my key searches for when I'm doing my research, and also thank you to the librarians at the university for helping me learn how to research properly, because I definitely thought I did before this and I didn't know how to. So my first challenge, and the most prominent one across the whole project, was finding a definition for what an organics ban actually looks like, considering it is very variable across the world and it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all. So the best way that I found to do this was to break it down into, as per the recommendation of one of the papers I was reading, was to break it into source, type, and property. So waste by source looks like our households and our industries and construction and demolition. waste by type is about its level of recoverability or the amount of waste treatment that it requires. And then waste by property is the amount of carbon content that it has in it. So this is a summary of all the countries that have introduced an organics ban to landfills, countries and states. So I've just been going through and creating a table and filling out all the information, which I'll show you at the end. So when going international, it made it very difficult because, for instance, Europe tends to define theirs by a combination of source, type and property, whereas places like the US were just basing it on the type. And so considering it wasn't necessarily capturing every group in society, it was difficult to decide whether or not the country had a ban. So I'll just take you through a few case studies of some of the most notable places I looked at, starting with the EU Landfill Directive. So this directive was made in 1999, and these are the targets set out. And these are the countries that are participating in a landfill ban and those that are not, for the 27 countries that are part of this EU directive. So the results show that countries that are participating in the ban have seen significant reductions in their landfilling of food waste or organic waste in between 2010 and 2021. Interestingly, Germany actually goes up in its amount, and that is because with increasing population, as much as efforts may go into reducing, it still does tend to increase as well. So they also conducted a report summarising all of their successful and analysing the successful factors for diverting waste, food waste from landfills, and so I'll just run you through some of them. So landfill capacity has been noted to be one of the most what would you call it? If there are landfills available, people will use them. So closing landfills have been really important for reducing the amount of waste going to the landfills. Even though they have decreased landfills, that's normally because they don't meet requirements, and it's not, and it's resulting in larger landfills, but less of them. Incineration, a lot of times this is the next step as an option. However, it's also got quite a lot of public opposition as well to it, just because it is, even though it's a better alternative to a landfill, it's not the most ideal option. Making sure there's separate collection of biodegradable waste. So essentially, like what we're seeing in Dunedin, they're rolling out the green waste bins. If those options aren't available to people, they're not going to cooperate. So making sure that there's really successful systems put in place for the people is really important. Mechanical biological treatment. So essentially this just separates all the waste and then treats it depending on mechanically, and then treats it as another option that is better than landfilling. And then we've got composting, which is a great alternative as well. That will be what is happening with our green waste bins. However, with composting, you have the issue of ensuring that there's the markets for the compost, because otherwise that compost can just potentially get landfilled, which was seen in the EU, where there weren't markets set up for the compost. So landfill costs and economic instruments have been huge. So where there has been a landfill ban, there's also often been a landfill tax. As part of moving more towards the zero emissions in the EU, they are also bringing in incineration taxes as well, as the next step towards composting and just more environmentally friendly options. Regional responsibilities and cooperation, so enforcing it correctly and making sure that it's really well defined is important, because where there's wish-washy rules, people don't tend to cooperate. So another thing is public acceptance and communication. Having the public on board is super crucial. There have been places that have had less successful waste diversions due to a lack of public cooperation. And then another one is in terms of measuring the EU as a whole, it was quite difficult, and a lot of the places noted that the quality of the data does vary from country to country, but that is also assessed in a lot of the reports. They mention how reliable the data is, or they analyse how reliable it is. Second case study is South Korea. They've done some really, really cool things. So they've moved from volume-based waste disposal to weight-based. So essentially people, there's a really cool little video, and this grandma who didn't really know, had never grown up in a generation where there was any sort of recycling of food waste. She had a little diagram on her fridge that they provided for people to be able to cooperate. And so essentially you try and take out as much of the weight as possible from your food waste, because you have to pay to dispose of it. So this is also incentivizing people to do things like dehydrating their food waste to remove the water, just to save even more money. And then also urban farming has been, which is the other photo, and just making people more aware of their environment. It can be quite difficult in massive cities to be environmentally conscious. And so urban farming has proven to be a really good way for the composting markets to have somewhere to put their compost, and also just to get people more engaged. So the problem was that in South Korea, that as culturally they do a lot of small plate servings, and that generates a lot of food waste, quite a significant amount more than in the EU and the US. So in 2005, the government implemented the ban, and since then it's been very successful. They have also brought in compulsory food waste bags, so that they biodegrade, and then it's just more environmentally friendly overall, and that has supported the landfill ban. The results have gone from 2% food waste recycling to 95% today, so there's been a massive turnaround. People have really got on board with that, and that is definitely a combination of those factors I talked about earlier in the EU. It is definitely a massive task to introduce one, but when done properly and effectively, it is super successful. And yeah, that's just some more results. That was a video, but I won't play that because I've talked about it all. And then Nova Scotia. So they introduced theirs in 1995. So they wanted to reduce their waste by 50%. So they were the first state in Canada to introduce a ban. They also, so some of their ways to support this ban is clear plastic bags, so that when the waste is coming through, it's far easier for people to visually identify whether or not this is whether or not the bags are containing other types of waste, and whether or not they've been separated properly. And then also the accessibility, so making sure those bins are available for everyone. And then another thing that is quite prevalent throughout Canada and the US is extended producer responsibility. So they're tending to really target those larger groups and corporations, and also including restaurants, which is really cool because we do see a lot of food waste in restaurants. So I'll just show you what my table's kind of been looking like so you get an idea for what I've been working on. So place name, the name of the ban, and then the year that it was brought in, its target, scope, any food waste specifics, and then the diversion results and any additional comments. So I've been going through and doing that for a variety of countries. These are just a few. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, let me know.
Right, we've got 2 mics. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Caroline.
Yeah, questions from the crowd or online. Maybe Jeff's there if he sees one pop up on Zoom. Yeah.
Awesome, well done. Those are very different but interesting presentations. I had one for you, Megan. I was wondering, what would a landfill ban look like in New Zealand context?
I think it would be very similar to places like Nova Scotia, and I would really love to see the what they do in South Korea, but I don't know if they would have the technological advancements to do that. The massive barrier to a landfill ban at the moment in New Zealand is the fact that there's no incineration capacity, or the waste has nowhere to divert to because there's not that massive investment at the moment. So I think it would look very composting heavy, because I think we're quite conscious of our environment in New Zealand in that sense. That's something that has also been through our education systems quite heavily growing up. So I think that would be sort of what it would look like.
I've got a follow up on that actually. In terms of sort of best practice in New Zealand with councils that are doing the diversion and organics, composting, that sort of thing. Was that part of the scope of your work? Did you look into where in New Zealand the best kind of work's happening in terms of the resource that can be created from recycling organics at the waste management level?
I at the beginning of my project was getting ready to learn all about New Zealand first, and then I was like told no, you've got to do overseas. So mine has essentially not really touched on New Zealand or Australia, a lot of the findings, and there were a few reports I read that were using the overseas literature to base recommendations for us and Australia, which often looked into not necessarily creating too much like incineration capacity and diversion options like that, because they are so expensive and require so much investment. And if people are seriously considering moving towards zero waste and carbon net, then they should that's not a long-term solution.
Yeah, great answer. Thank you. Any other questions?
Eden and Andrew, I think you mentioned how you're picking up work that other students have done in previous summers and other students and academics at the university have done over a longer term. Was there anything that surprised you when you started looking in, whether it's like analysing the tree rings or doing those plots, and you're like, oh, this is surprising from my expectations about how natives grow in New Zealand or whatever?
I think the area that we were working in was really challenging, as it was dry and not a lot of success, unfortunately, has actually occurred in the whole experimental area that the university works in. So that was really interesting to see efforts being put in but still not working. So it's still a huge work in progress, like with us, and hopefully ongoing master's students, PhD students still doing work there, so that areas in New Zealand that are like that and are harsher environments are able to be regenerated. Yeah, I think the expectation was it would be almost easier than it actually was. But as we said, it's not. Most people have the misconception that you just plant a tree and it will grow. But in reality, actually, all these factors play into that, and you're not guaranteed tree growth or regeneration.
Yeah, I will just say one thing that was surprising to me about the data itself was that the 3 graphs that I showed on the PowerPoint, that was most of the species that we found, the 3 that we presented. The remainder of the species that we did found, there was only samples for maybe 1 or 2 of them. So most of the samples that were collected were actually of those 3 species. Yeah.
Question. I had a question for you too as well, actually. I was just curious if you, because you're talking about the problematic nature of planting Pinus radiata, and I was just wondering if you had some of that, some of those examples of what those problems are, just off the top of your head.
So wilding pine is a massive issue where basically the pine trees have been planted and then the seeds establish in other places and they outcompete our native plants as they grow a lot faster. Within 20 years, you could have a fully grown pine tree. In 20 years, you might have a 3-meter high beech tree, which isn't very large. Our beech forests are hundreds of years old with large beech trees. Whereas with pine, like I said, it just establishes really quickly, outcompetes the natives. Yeah. And also actually another huge issue is it's really shallow rooted, whereas our native trees are deep rooted, which allows for soil stability. So the likes of like Gisborne, where all the landslides happened, can be caused by the planting of pine trees.
That's your question?
Yeah, but if you've got extras,
No, that's good.
Yeah, great. Rhys, I've got a question for you. So in terms of these sorts of communication films, you know, these days with TikTok and the like, where these sort of sound bites of videos are sort of the norm or becoming the norm for the younger audience at least, how do you sort of land on the optimum length of a piece like this to sort of target the audience that you're after? How does that work? Is that something you've been thinking about in your SciComm studies?
I feel like it's constantly changing. Like they used to have, in fact, even up till last year, they had a grand showing of science communication masters films, which were usually 25, 30 minutes long in the regions. At a certain time of the year, it would be like a big kind of red carpet thing. And I've just been told recently that they're just discouraging science communication film students from making films that long because they won't have so much kind of use. They won't be able to go away and say, hey, we're going to flick this online and everyone will sit down for 30 minutes and watch it. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's a constantly evolving space, but you're quite right. You have to look at ways of taking something that was this long and then just taking it down to just its one message, one little snap.
Such a shame. I used to love going to those the natural history filmmaking presentations because you did have time to get into some of the detail, and it was a beautiful. I don't know if anyone's ever been to those, but they haven't run them for a couple of years.
They did one
last year. That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
They were amazing creations. Yeah.
Incredible. Okay. Maybe that's the end? Are we wrapping up now, Ray? Okay. Who goes first? I'll let you.
Yeah, so you guys, thank you very much. Let's have another round of applause for this last session. Thank you. Cool. So it just remains to me to wrap up today. So I'm going to start with a big mihi to everyone involved with making today happen. Caroline, did you have other things you wanted to say?
I think we were all going to do some reflecting, weren't we?
You want to do some reflections? And we'll do those first before I do my thank yous, because I'll leave those off. So, Ray, do you want to come up as well?
Maybe Ray might not have told you we were doing this.
I didn't know about this.
Yes, if they're here. Craig's not here, but
Yeah, Craig had to disappear off
Chris.
to another meeting.
yeah. Get the whole crew.
Ray, I've got 2% on my iPad on my little thing here. Maybe I should go first before my screen disappears.
Well, I don't know if I got 2% left in my brain. So
I know it has been incredibly rich and diverse and really, really interesting. And I just want to say thank you to all of you for doing such wonderful presentations. I really was impressed by the communication that you all did. I mean, I think this is a real skill that you all seem to have captured really well. And I reflect on my own experience of undergrad and sort of early postgrad study, and I would have been terrified to get up and do what you've done today. And I think even if you were feeling nervous, it didn't show. It was really, everyone presented very confidently. I really loved the diversity of the disciplines that we've heard from today. You know, there were people from, psychom, history, sustainable business, ecology, law, earth sciences, ag, and all sorts in between as well. So just so interesting to hear, the gifts that you bring from your own disciplines coming into the sustainability space. Just really fascinating stuff. The excellent visuals, the great structure and the timing, you all stuck to time really well. Again, this is very impressive, because if you've ever been to academic conferences, you'll see the challenge that can be for some people to keep to time. So that was, again, a very important skill, and you did that really well. I also think that the research you did was rigorous. You followed a really good scientific process. You had great research questions, and you used great methods. And for some of you, you put together your first ethics application, and so you learnt a lot through that process. And this is excellent skill building for you as you move through into the next phase of your work. And also a great range of theoretical and also practical contributions. And I think this is great in the sustainability space. We have, a very broad reach across lots of different sub-disciplines, and the outputs of the work today have been really interesting to hear. So I just want to thank you again for all of your wonderful work over the last, 8 to 10 weeks, and for some shorter periods of time that you've been doing your work and seeing some great results. So congratulations and thank you.
Kia ora, my turn. I think the diversity of the research that you picked up on is really, really important. And to connect that to the metaphor for Pūhau Anatara, and the idea of creating tailwind conditions, we all have a role in creating those conditions. And that was absolutely exemplified today with the different angles that everybody was. The wind was blowing from all different directions. I'm not sure if that works for the metaphor, but maybe I'm going too far, but there you go. The other thing that I'd like to link into is some of the topics that we deal with around sustainability and thinking into the future can be pretty heavy. And it's been really obvious and really fulfilling today to see lots of people being quite happy because they're focused on solutions. And it's been work that has filled their cup rather than I use this metaphor of putting another rock in your backpack. So that's been a hugely important part, because I think we have to approach these challenges with hope. And to coin a phrase that Karen down in the College of Education, her recent book about youth activism for change, that idea of fierce hope. And it's that fierce hope that I've seen come through today. So, ka pai, great work. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, I didn't know I was meant to do this, but I don't actually have too much to add, to be honest. I am in agreement with these two, that just the diversity and the range and the passion of everyone studying these topics. It's inspiring for myself, and just yeah, I'm also like, this has been a first for me supervising students. So it's kind of been an interesting role being a student, giving back to students. And yeah, I'm just so proud of them, seeing them where they've come and like how far they've come. And yeah, I hope it's been a great experience for them. And yeah, for a lot of them, it's like been a first time getting up and presenting in front of an audience. So yeah, I also have done a bit of presenting in my time, but yeah, I remember the first like times that I was presenting, it was horrifying. I don't even think I could control like my hands from shaking and my face from going bright red. So yeah, it only gets easier over time. So yeah, just really proud of them and just, yeah, everyone. It's been really eye-opening for me and really cool to see what's going on in the broader sustainability space here at the university. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and not to repeat anything. So I think that the only other thing that occurs to me about today is just the sense of community. It's been really great to have people here, sort of a bit of a revolving door of the audience members, and having family and having other people in the same cohort as you that you might have been seeing over the last 10 weeks or running in parallel. But that sense of community I think is really important, and definitely part of the kaupapa that I hope we can preserve going forward, because it's you know, in the past we've heard stories about people who have found the 10-week summer scholarship experiences quite lonely, and I think that's that sense of community, as Ray is sort of saying, that can help you have that positivity towards making these important changes towards a thriving future. And the other sense of community is being part of this continuum of the research process, and we've had some examples even just this afternoon. So Andrew and Eden talking about some of the previous scholarship that's happened at Mahu Whenua. We had Jodie talk about doing a project that similar to that Calum had done, looking at green hydrogen analysis and picking up on that. It took it so far, but it opened some more questions, and we've had a lot of the presentations today sort of ending with these are the future questions that can be picked up. And I think you should all feel encouraged that that those questions can be picked up, that your work, a lot of you have direct funders, and some of them have been in the audience today who will receive those reports with open arms and hopefully open minds. But equally, there are channels now like the journal that Ray alluded to at the start, where we can sort of put them on the shelf there, and hopefully other people can find them and pick them up again. And who knows who's going to be sort of knocking on your door in 5 years, and where you'll be at the time, and they'll ask you about the summer that you spent in 23, 24. So yeah, so you're part of that community as well.
Yeah. And we don't forget you. You're now part of us. You're part of our alumni. Just remember that. So, you know, having the journal as a sort of repository for your projects means that they live on within the work that we will continue to do, and other summer students in the future as well. So welcome to the whānau, and go forth and do great things. And we look forward to seeing where you take your sustainability work.
Right. Should I wrap up? Yeah, I've got some, yeah. Do you want to just chip in if I forget anyone? Yeah, my notes. So first mihi goes to Mairi, if you're listening online. So Mairi's been the administrative supremo, the person that has been sort of kindly encouraging the students to you know, pick a time slot and to send in their presentations. So the reason things have run so smoothly is due to her work, and through challenging. A lot of the time she was in Canada, so different time zones and out of the loop, and not having seen this seminar work before as well. So a big mihi to Mairi for things running so smoothly. Thanks to all of the chairs that we've seen, most of whom were just in this panel, for making sure all of the sessions have run nice and smoothly, and also that they're kind of the driving forces behind the programs that you've been part of if you've done your summer scholarship this year. Thanks to the funders, as I said, they provide the money to make it happen, but hopefully, more importantly, they're going to take what the research has produced and actually do something with it and make an impact with that. So thank you to those of you who've made it today to listen, and hopefully those reports that you receive kind of meet and exceed your expectations. Thanks to the other audience members, the friends and family who've come along, and the other presenters who've supported those who've been up here. Thanks, of course, to all summer scholars for the work that you've done, the enthusiasm that you've shown throughout the process, the openness. It's been really great. There are those moments with any kind of research where you do kind of find yourself in the hole, and it's been great to find within these programs that you're supporting each other through that process, and there's an openness to ask for help. It's a learning process as well as producing a research outcome. So I think that's been really amazing to see you all go through this process in your different ways with your different projects. Just a reminder that everything has been recorded, and it will be put onto the Sustainability Office's YouTube page. So because you can only be in one place at one time, and you want to catch up on the streams that you've missed. So the streams that have been on the Zoom room, if you've been here in the Terrace Lounge or vice versa. So that will all be up at some point next week, I imagine. And you can choose whether or not you send that link to your friends and family, depending on how confident you're feeling. But yeah, that's always going to, well, maybe it makes it sound worse, but it's always going to be up there. But it's another good memento of your work over this summer. So all that remains for me is just have I forgotten someone? Oh, absolutely. Jeff, if you're there, and the rest of the AV team who can magically speak to us. Thanks very much for, again, making this run really smoothly and supporting us through this process. It's been, yeah, absolutely nothing in the AV room went wrong. Absolutely flawless. So amazing job from those guys. Anyone else? Anyone else I've forgotten? Cool. So just karakia whakamutanga to close today's session. I think it's really important, you open these sessions with a karakia to kind of create a space of tapu, a sacredness, because of the importance of the meeting, to create a safe space for us to exchange ideas. It's also important to close out that, to sort of remove that tapu so that we can go away and clear and enjoy our weekends, but also to acknowledge that we are joined by what we've experienced today. So karakia for you. Unuhia, 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 ki te uru tapu nui, kia wātia, kia māma, te nākau, te tinana, te wairua, I te ara takata. Koia ra e rongo, whakairia, ake ki runga, kia tina, tina, huie, taikie. Kia ora.